Just after midnight on June 6, 1944, German radar operators in Pas-de-Calais watched two massive Allied convoys advancing toward their coast. This was the invasion they'd been waiting for. Contacts advancing, someone called out. Two groups, speed holding steady. Doors banged as messengers ran for phones. Gun crews scrambled to their positions, peering into water, turning from black to gray, fingers tightening on triggers. The Allies were coming straight at them, exactly where Hitler had predicted they would strike. 3,000 feet above the channel, bomb aimer John Bell crouched inside a Lancaster bomber, one hand gripping a canvas bag of thin aluminum strips, the other holding tight to a flare chute. His job was simple: count to 3 and drop another bundle into the darkness. 1, 2, 3, drop. What the Germans were tracking wasn't a fleet. It was foil drifting on wind, pushed forward by bombers flying perfect circles and small boats creeping through smoke. Within hours, the real invasion would hammer Normandy, 150 miles west, while Germany's strongest coastal guns stayed locked on ghosts. The Lancaster's engines thrummed steadily at 180 miles per hour, while the pilot steered through each turn with careful precision. The intercom crackled. Left 5. Hold. Now. Bell shifted his weight as the aircraft settled into position and started his count again. 1, 2, 3, drop. The bundle fell away into the darkness. 1, 2, 3, drop again. The rhythm was strange, boring, and nerve-wracking at the same time. A few miles over, pilot John Leslie Munro, Les, they called him, had his hands on the control column of another Lancaster. He'd flown the bouncing bombs at the dams before, and tonight he was flying perfect circles in the dark without drifting. Squadron Commander Leonard Cheshire flew nearby in his own aircraft, his voice coming steady through Munro's headset. 3,000, 180, watch it. Munro eased the nose down slightly. Instrument lights cast a dull green glow across his face. Searchlights swept the sky outside, thin white beams hunting for something that wasn't there. Back in the operations room, a voice crackled through the headphones. No visual, returned steady. The tone stayed professional, but something was off about the picture. The guns got the order. Open fire for lack of identification. Batteries erupted along the dunes, orange-white flashes right at the waterline. Searchlights swept faster and wider. Bell caught the gun, flashes as bright pulses through the plexiglass, and felt them as a tremor in the air. Flak started climbing, scattered at first, then thicker, like rain going from pinpricks to a solid downpour. The pilot held his course. The navigator kept his headings. Bell kept counting. 1, 2, 3, drop. The deception was elegant in its precision. The bombers held exactly 180 miles per hour, the speed of a convoy crossing the channel. Every 8 miles, they turned back and flew the same route again, dropping more foil. To radar operators below, each pass registered as the same convoy advancing 8 miles closer to shore. Small boats with radar reflectors crept forward through the darkness and pulled back through the smoke, thickening the picture. Hold 180, Cheshire said calmly. Munro tasted cordite in the air even at this altitude and called out, "Searchlights ahead." He held the line. Bell dropped another bundle. The foil tumbled into the slipstream and vanished. Below, the plotter's pencil kept moving. The contacts kept advancing. New groups kept forming, and the dark horizon offered nothing to prove otherwise. 1 in the morning off the Pas-de-Calais. Small boats switch on their radar jammers, and lights stay hidden under covers. Across the channel on the English side, aircraft start lining up in the darkness. There's 2 miles between each plane, and they fly back and forth along the coast in perfect parallel lines. They turn, come back, turn again. The formation never breaks. Les Munro flies this pattern like he's memorized every inch. Leonard Cheshire watches the instruments. 2 miles to turn. Height, good. Now. Munro banks smooth and easy. Down below, Bell feels the shallow roll and keeps counting. The vibration works against him, the slight sway from flak shells, the way his mind wanders when the work is small and repetitive. Bell forces himself to focus. 1, 2, 3, drop. The stuff he's dropping isn't tape. It's thin foil, cut to exact lengths so enemy radar bounces right back at them. It doesn't feel like a weapon, it feels like a chore. A few miles north, more bombers circle overhead above the jammers. Each one carries 2 pilots so they can switch off. There's no relief aircraft waiting to take over. The men in those cockpits just keep flying the pattern. Down on the water, the boat crews start their part of the act. They jam at around 1 in the morning, and an hour later, they send out radio messages that sound like a real convoy. The point isn't just talking, it's making the whole thing believable. If defenders hear what a convoy should sound like, they're more likely to trust what their radar is showing them. German coastal radar works by bouncing radio waves off ships and reading what comes back. Foil cut the right length, scrambles that signal. Drop thousands of strips at the right moment, and suddenly the radar screen fills with a huge blip. Fly a line of aircraft 2 miles apart and move that line forward step by step, and to the radar operator, it looks like a whole fleet moving in. But mess it up, if those planes turn too wide, speed up, climb, or drop, the line falls apart. Let the timing slip even a little, and the illusion breathes wrong. The real job is to act like a machine, to keep things steady even when shells are bursting around you. That's why Bell's counting matters. Munro's heading matters. The navigator's math matters when flak is coming up and the cockpit glass is shaking. Back in Munro's aircraft, the searchlights are getting brighter and flak bursts are closer. He could climb 100 feet. He could accept some drift in the turn and no one would blame him. But a fleet only looks like a fleet if the line stays straight. Munro holds his course. Cheshire says steady on. That choice is what keeps the picture on the enemy's scope looking like a real convoy instead of falling apart. A 2-mile gap between planes isn't something you can see from one cockpit. It's pure math. At 180 miles per hour over dark water, you're covering a football field every second. The flight in takes 2.5 minutes. The flight out takes just over 2. The crews do this over and over for hours while the boats below pull off the same trick a different way. 18 small craft off Cap d'Antifer move towards shore to about 2 miles out, then back off to 7 miles while smoke covers them. 12 more boats off Pas-de-Calais do the exact same thing. Meanwhile, the bombers keep circling, and the radio operators say the right words at the right pace to sound like a convoy moving through the water. Cheshire calls out, "Hold 180. Bell counts. About 3 seconds between each bundle. The shore controller. Open fire for lack of identification." There's a small problem with one of the Lancasters. A strap over the flares got snagged earlier, and Bell had to rip it loose. He tells the pilot they're good, then kneels back down. One thought crosses his mind, whether he'll ever actually see what he's helping to build. He can't see radar. All he can see is the glow of gauges and his own gloves in the darkness. Down in the boats, a petty officer snaps at a young sailor when he messes up the timing on a radio call. They try again. The second time, it works. The sea's rough enough to knock a man off his feet and shake loose the jammers. Salt spray hits faces like needles. A sailor grips a rope and curses his own fingers because if he lets go, the fake fleet stops being fake. By 2 in the morning, the deception is solid. The picture on shore makes sense. A convoy that didn't exist an hour ago is now moving toward the coast in steady steps, the exact place defenders were told to watch for. And they're watching. These aren't stupid people. It takes real skill to fool someone this good. Experienced defenders, good equipment, professional training, all of it beaten by foil and timing and stubborn people who won't let the pattern break. Foil and smoke against radar and coastal guns. A 3-second human rhythm against 15-second German planning cycles. A 2-mile gap that only exists as math against a shoreline lit up by gunfire. All of it pointing the same way. Small moves, big reactions. A Sterling bomber loses its rhythm for a second when the second pilot takes over. The first pilot shakes out his hands and checks the altimeter before sliding back into formation. On the radio, the fake radio traffic keeps going. Convoy element 3, reduced to 8 knots. No real ship hears that. A radar operator does, and it sticks in his mind as proof. The trick isn't magic. It's doing the same thing over and over under fire. It's the hardest thing to pull off in combat because combat is designed to break your rhythm, but they do it anyway. You can hear it when the air changes, when guns accept a lie as truth. Even from 3,000 feet up, you feel it. Flak's got rhythm to it when it's disciplined. The bursts follow patterns. walking toward where they think you'll be. Tonight, the predictions are solid because the courses are steady. Bell feels the aircraft shake through a thick patch of black bursts. Through his knees, he can tell the shells are walking up toward their altitude. Steady, Cheshire says, voice level. Munro checks the altimeter and eases the throttle. The numbers barely move. Dead on, he says. They push through the rough air, and it smooths out. Bell's count stutters, just for a beat. But he catches himself, without rushing. Keys the intercom. Minor delay, rhythm restored. Down on the shore, a battery's tracking radar returns, but they can't see any ships. Searchlights sweep across water that won't cooperate. Someone on the radio says, "Still no visual, but the returns look solid." They fire anyway. This is exactly the kind of night the coast was built to handle. They can't wait for perfect proof, so they decide to act before they're sure. Up the coast from Cap d'Antifer, the boats hold steady. A coxswain tastes diesel and salt, orders the run toward the 2-mile line. The sea slaps at the hull, not hard, just over and over. Jammers scramble the airwaves while scripted messages tell their story. You hear things like Convoy Element 3, slow to 8 knots, or escorts got minor mechanical. It's all paint on someone else's radar screen. Every message that lands on time adds another layer to the deception. When one aircraft has to drop out, another slides into its spot without leaving a gap. The radar picture doesn't care that men get tired. It cares about consistency. That's why the handoff matters. The new plane keeps the same speed and altitude, drops foil on the same rhythm, so the other side of the channel sees one solid wall instead of a comb with teeth missing. Any gap, any sudden thin spot, and the picture breathes wrong, a trained operator might catch it, so they don't let it breathe. You've got 16 Lancasters building the taxable wall, 6 Sterlings creating the Glimmer picture with 2 backups, a dozen small motor launches off Pas-de-Calais, and nearly 20 small craft moving in and out of smoke off Cap d'Antifer. It's like dead weight being pulled across the night on a rope. Recon planes lift off from the Pas-de-Calais sector to find this convoy. Controllers read out bearings and speeds from their scopes, and for a while, both coasts hear a clear picture of something that doesn't exist. The operators and crews are good, fast, and disciplined. But competence loses to a good trick anyway. Munro gets a close one, a black burst that fills the cabin with the smell of burnt powder. A loose piece of foil floats up from the floor and lands on Bell's wrist. He brushes it off and drops the next bundle, thinking about nothing but the count. 3 seconds. His throat's dry and his shoulder cramps. A petty officer in a small boat tells a rating whose hands won't stop shaking. Take a breath, then try again. The next message goes out with the right rhythm. A second pilot in a Sterling corrects a drift in altitude before it becomes a problem. A navigator recalculates the wind and calls for a slight left on the next pass. All these tiny decisions under pressure keep the illusion solid enough to hold up under enemy fire. Returns. Steady. No visual. Hold 180. It's professionals trusting their instruments, because in their world, gauges don't lie. And that's exactly what our people are. They're forging those truths. By 4 a.m, the shore guns have found their rhythm, hard percussion from sand and concrete. Searchlights write pale lines on the low clouds, while recon planes send back nothing that matches the radar. Yet the returns keep marching 2 miles at a time. The whole game isn't about counting ships or planes. It's about moving an edge across a screen in a way that looks real. Munro knows when it ends. Around 5 o'clock, Taxable shuts down. Getting there without breaking the pattern, that's the job. He counts the minutes like fence posts while Bell keeps dropping foil. A close burst rattles the windscreen and makes his next call sound rough. He swallows and keeps the rhythm. Rhythm steady, he reports. The crew takes it and moves on. The sky fades slowly at first, then suddenly. Searchlights start looking stupid in daylight, so someone kills them. The guns go quiet. These are practical men who know when what they're seeing stops matching reality. Dawn breaks over the Pas-de-Calais beaches, and the horizon is empty. That convoy that's been creeping along all night just vanishes like breath on a window. Just after 5 a.m, near Taxable, close to Cap d'Antifer, the order comes down to wrap it up. The last planes head in. The walls that got pounded all night finally fall. The Lancasters turn for home, and the small boats start heading back to where they belong. On the way out, there's one more thing to do. They lay mines, partly to make this whole night of tricks actually mean something, and partly to give the planes and boats leaving a real job that doesn't contradict the lie they've been telling. Mines are steel and explosives and damage sitting right there on the water. Dropping them on the way out leaves something the enemy will feel later. Bell's shoulders are killing him. He flexes his fingers and feels grooves pressed into his glove where the foil caught and rubbed the same spot over and over. He settles into the jump seat for just a minute and lets the engine noise calm him down. Munro keeps the numbers steady like he's drawing a line on a map. Cheshire reads off the final calls in a voice that sounds like they're almost done. When they turn for home, nobody celebrates. Off the coast of Pas-de-Calais, Task Force B leaves station and heads for New Haven. By early afternoon, the small boats finally tie up. Lines get thrown, boots hit the gangways. What you see are quiet conversations between people with the same look on their faces. We did what we came to do, and we'll find out later if it actually worked. The debriefings hit hard. A phrase starts going around the whole force, like a verdict. They fired at ghosts. Before dawn, the order was to open fire for lack of identification. After dawn, no landing. Before the night started, people thought dropping foil was just some junior crew job, some gimmick. After the night, there's a quiet realization that a thin strip of metal and the discipline to drop it at exactly the right moment, again and again, pulled guns and attention away from where it actually mattered. A small, boring task becomes a weapon. The men who did it feel that shift in their shoulders and wrists and throats. Timing creates the picture. That's why the wall looked like a real threat. That's why the enemy's radar kept getting returns they couldn't match to any ship, but couldn't ignore either until daylight came. When you build a pattern solid enough, people will find a reason for it. The defenders did exactly what trained professionals do. They trusted their instruments over their own eyes. Because at night, instruments are more reliable. That's not stupidity, that's competence. We're not laughing at idiots here. We're watching good men do what good men do and still lose to a cheaper trick played better. 16 Lancasters, 6 Sterlings and 2 more on standby, a dozen HDMLs, 18 small craft, 4 more jamming farther west. 2 miles in, 7 miles back. 2.5 minutes down the line, about 2 minutes back. 180 miles per hour, 3,000 feet, 3 seconds. Together, under pressure, timed by hands and voices and nerves, they built a ghost that could actually take a hit. Bell hears something in the debrief that sticks with him. We dropped them at about 3 seconds. We were 2 miles apart. 180 at 3,000. He nods, because that's exactly what his body remembers. Munro thinks about the searchlights, and that moment when he almost let the speed drift and chose not to. Cheshire remembers his own steady voice in the noise of the cabin. A calm voice is as real as a hand on your shoulder. On one of the small boats, a rating peels the tape off his headset and sees a raw stripe where it's been digging in. He laughs once, quietly, not because anything's funny, but because a laugh tells your hands you're done. Back in the operations room, someone looks out at the daylight water and says the quiet thing. No landing observed along this sector. There's no anger in that sentence. What you get is professional adjustment. The men who were certain 6 hours ago have new information now, so they update their picture. That's the job. The real sting isn't in being wrong. It's in how a small, disciplined lie can outrun a large, disciplined truth for just long enough to matter. The story ends where the phantom returns fade in the sun. The real ending is a quiet room, a line in a log, and a man like John Bell standing up and flexing his fingers, feeling that specific exhaustion where a strap rubbed his glove raw. 3 lines hang in the air. From the orders, batteries to open fire for lack of identification. From the pilot, hold 180. From what happened, they fired at ghosts. Sun hits wet rope. Boots step on wooden slats. A man rubs at his wrist where tape pulled the skin raw, leaving an angry red stripe. Throughout history, across every war, every conflict, there's one lesson that keeps coming up. If you can make your enemy see something that isn't really there, if you can trick them into believing something false, you've basically won. They'll burn through their resources defending against it. Money, energy, people, all wasted on something that was never even real. The tools change, sure. Technology gets better, tactics shift, methods get updated. But here's the thing that never changes. The guts it takes to actually pull something like that off. The way you have to execute it, the timing, the rhythm, that stays the same whether we're talking about centuries ago or right now.